Hi, Martha. Maddi Runkles found out she was pregnant in January, and in February she notified the school. The 18-year-old straight-A student was then told by Heritage Academy that she'd be suspended, removed as student council president, and would finish the school year at home. The Runkles family appealed, and the school finally decided Maddi could finish the year with her 14 classmates, but would not be allowed to walk with them at graduation. The principal issued a statement saying she signed the school pledge, then broke it, adding, quote, "Maddi is being disciplined not because she's pregnant, but because she was immoral." And pro-life groups are now defending her, saying her school is making it more likely that young women will choose abortion over embarrassment.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt for The Remnant Underground. Interesting video footage there, Rob. Thanks for queuing that up. That's the story. The story of Maddi Runkles has tipped off a firestorm of protests. Not so much from the left, by the way, but from the right, from our side. The pro-life groups setting up a pretty good teaching moment for all of us who are pro-life. Things are changing. Now, before I even get started, I want to be very clear. My comments tonight are not intended to pile on this poor young lady who has gotten herself in trouble. I understand that. There, but for the grace of God. I realize this is a tough call, and I get the argument that pro-life groups are making, that you know, she didn't abort her pregnancy, she didn't kill her baby, and that's great. And I agree, of course, that's great. But there's something else, and I'm going to invite you to maybe think a little bit outside the box, if I can use a corny expression. Something else we got to look at here, something much larger, a much larger social and moral concern, and that is, it has to do with the root cause of abortion, the cause of abortion, which of course is our society's changing attitudes on promiscuity and sex outside of marriage. Nothing new there. But therein lies the problem. Now this is a huge story, it's a huge issue, and nobody really wants to talk about it because more and more of the problem that I'm referring to, we see it raising its head even in the pro-life movement. Now, our columnist over at the Remnant newspaper, Chris Jackson, he exposed this problem, or he helped expose this problem this week when he posted an article, again, on the Remnant website, defending the Christian school involved that we just saw in this video clip. He's defending the school. And surprisingly, very surprisingly, for this, the Remnant came under fierce fire, especially from something called pro-life feminists. Now, this is a term that I guess I don't fully understand. Are you familiar with that one, Rob?
I've not heard that. No.
Yeah, pro-life feminism, pro-life feminists. I mean, if any movement could be said to have been driven from its inception by radical proponents of abortion, it would have to be the feminist movement. I mean, let's be real. Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and the pro-life movement are pretty mutually exclusive. Now, I realize I'm an old guy, but I'm wondering why well-meaning young pro-life women especially want to identify with these feminists. You got any thoughts on that, Rob?
This one escapes me.
Yeah, it escapes me too. I just feel older and older all the time. I don't really get it. And I'm not making a judgment, I'm just asking, because maybe there's a definition for this that they trot out there all the time, and I'm just not aware of what it is, and I would immediately go, oh, boom, yeah, I get it. Maybe it has to do with just strong women and independent women. I don't know, but it just seems like an odd coupling there. And so the pro-life feminists are up in arms now over this little Christian school that we just saw in the video clip, over their policy, which to me seems pretty straightforward. Rob, you and I went to Catholic schools. I mean, if some girl had ended up pregnant as a senior in a Catholic high school, probably she wouldn't have been invited to cap and gown up and go down the aisle and celebrate, right? Yeah. I don't think that would have, I think it was fairly standard operating procedures to have some sort of a prohibition along these lines. You don't deny them their diploma, you just, well, maybe you're not going to celebrate the fact that you're pregnant now. So this school, you know, it has a policy that prohibits premarital sex, just like the Catholic schools did for a long time. And then, surprisingly and encouragingly, this particular Christian school enforces the policy, arguing that this young woman should, you know, probably not be allowed to participate in this same way. But our pro-life feminists are saying, no. This young lady should be a pinup girl for teens faced with tough situations, tough decisions, who nevertheless choose life in the end. Now, fair enough, I get that point. But again, let's delve into this just a little bit more deeply, because I think this is a very important sort of seismic shift in the conservative pro-life movement. First off, this young lady in the video that we just saw, she knew the rules of her Christian school beforehand. Now, she violated those rules, and yet, nevertheless, she's allowed to graduate. But she won't be allowed again to walk down the aisle as part of the graduation, the commencement ceremony. That's it. Now remember, this is a high school graduation. I mean, I don't know about you, Rob, but I tried to get out of my high school graduation. It's not the end of the world. There's more coming in life, especially for a talented young girl that like this one seems to be. So all Mrs. Runkles, or I'm sorry, Ms. Runkles, had to do was say, yeah, with all the other younger girls looking up to us seniors, it makes sense that our school, our Christian school, would want to keep the bar fairly high when it comes to promiscuity. You know, the fact that I kept my baby, she could say, will make the rounds like wildfire in this community, so the pro-life message will get out anyway, and I'm just going to docilely go along with the school's rules. But instead, she went to the New York Times and tattled on her Christian school, and of course the Times wasted no time at all railing against the stupid, backward Christian school for going after the root cause of abortion, which is the breakdown of sexual morality in society. I think the school did the right thing, but I apparently am in the minority here. Actions have consequences, and this is what they're arguing at the school. And a high school senior can hardly walk down the aisle, 8 months pregnant, without conveying the impression, at least to the younger students, that the school really isn't all that serious about its zero-tolerance policy when it comes to promiscuity. It's just pretty basic stuff. And, you know, if the father of the child, just so we make sure that we're being clear on this, if the father of the child in this case attended this school, which he does not, he absolutely should be held to the same standard and the same punishment. You know, you flagrantly break the rules and you violate your own contract with your own school, you're not walking in the graduation. That's just the way it is. And kids not so very long ago would have immediately accepted this. And families would have immediately not only accepted it, but demanded it. Fathers and mothers of unfortunate kids to whom this happened, where they got in trouble. But not anymore. Now, I was nearly blocked from attending my own graduation from Christendom College, Rob. Did you know that? No. True story. My offense was a little less serious. I failed to pay an outstanding parking ticket, which I disputed because it really wasn't a parking, no parking zone. Right. So we had a little thing, and I said, okay, well, I'm just not going to come to the commencement ceremony, and we worked out a deal and everything's fine now. But I can't imagine running into anybody and saying, over a parking ticket, let alone something like this, getting pregnant, out of wedlock as a senior in high school now. So, incredibly, the principal is the villain in this case. He's being crucified, even after he wrote a beautiful statement making it clear to parents that the young lady would indeed earn her diploma, that he was very happy that she didn't abort the child, and that Miss Runkles is being disciplined, quote, here's what he says, she's being disciplined, quote, not because she is pregnant, but because she was immoral. The best way to love her right now is to hold her accountable for her morality that began this situation, end quote. And oh boy, there's where all hell broke loose. The principal used the I word, immoral. See, you can't say that anymore. Immoral doesn't really have a meaning. It's like perversion, like a pervert. I don't know what a pervert would be in 2017. I don't think the word has a meaning anymore. And to say someone's immoral, well, that's a personal judgment, that's offensive. I think that's considered shaming someone. You can't do that. And so he's in big trouble for having said that she's being disciplined for being immoral, like they used to say in the old days. Who are you to judge, Mr. Principal? Has been the attitude ever since, as people are screaming at this poor guy. And I'm not talking about the far-left wackos. I'm talking about pro-life groups screaming at this guy for daring to go after the fundamentals here rather than just go for the easy, low-hanging fruit of, well, she didn't kill her baby. True, good, I'm glad she didn't. But again, there's a lot more to that. And what this school is doing, what this principal has said now in his letter, gets right to the nub of the controversy in this school and the larger controversy in society. And that is, immorality matters. It actually really does. No matter what the folks at the New York Times or in the public school system say to the contrary, morality matters. Sin matters. You remember the word sin, right? They used to use that word, not so much anymore. And the breaking of the sixth commandment, it's just as dangerous as breaking the fifth commandment. And that's what's going on here. That's what's going on here. So let's think about this for a moment in a little more serious way and try to cut away from the emotionalism and the polarizing that's tearing the pro-life movement right now in this argument, tearing it in half and giving the left something to really laugh about. This is kind of a big deal, in other words. Arguably, it's bigger even than abortion itself, since aside from killing the souls of millions and millions of young people, at least objectively speaking, promiscuity also is the fundamental cause of abortion. Again, this school is simply going for the fundamentals here, the causes, not the effects, by saying that this young lady cannot flaunt the fact that she was promiscuous while in high school and broke the rules. This school understands that once we begin to lighten up on premarital sex, where impressionable kids are concerned, we open the door for all sorts of things, even eventually abortion. After the conscience gets used to the habitual sin, immorality, even something like abortion is like, well, I've been doing a lot of other really terrible things. I've been breaking the 6th commandment for a long time. I guess I'll break the 5th commandment. It's all part of a process, a conditioning process. And where does this start? Where does the idea that maybe I need to get an abortion, where does it start, especially for young kids? Obviously, with sex, with promiscuity, of course, sex outside of marriage. And this is precisely the point that this Christian school is trying to drive home. Yes, abortion is a hideous crime against God and nature. But if the mentality behind rampant abortion is not addressed, contraception, recreational sex, premarital sex, rampant promiscuity, if this isn't addressed, we will never end abortion. And because it hasn't been seriously addressed, even by our friends in the pro-life movement, well, we're not exactly winning this culture war, are we? And that is why this school is not backing down, and that's why every pro-life group in America should be supporting this school and should be calling for all Catholic schools, all Christian schools to do the same. And all you feminists, pro-lifers out there, I'm not exactly sure what you are. Please shoot me an email and let us know what that means. But I can tell from looking at the work that you're doing, the good work that you're doing, I say thank you for your witness. Thank you for helping others to understand and appreciate the horrors of abortion. But at the same time, we all need to help each other acknowledge that we're victims of a global war right now that's gone on for a long time, a war against God. We're victims of a thoroughly immoral society, an amoral public school system, most of us. We're victims of a rotting and rotten, sex-addicted pop culture, of course. And as such, let's not lose sight of the larger theological and moral principles involved here, principles which this Christian school that we just saw in this video clip, principles that this school is trying to defend. Let's face it, most girls today, even, are not having abortions, not most of them, but most girls and boys today are certainly being encouraged from preschool on to kill their own little souls through rampant promiscuity, right? Everybody's talking about it, you know, and that, I believe, is the devil's endgame here. The establishment of a totally promiscuous society that will go for anything, even abortion, once it has deep-sixed Christian morality. You know, seriously teaching chastity, for example, and if you do that, you'll cripple the abortion industry. Reattach the old social stigma to promiscuity, and you'll slow abortion to a crawl. But close an eye to promiscuity, and you run the risk of removing that stigma that protected young women from abuse for a millennium or two, and also it will save millions of babies from the abortion mills. You know, will young people still fall and make mistakes and still get pregnant if you teach child? Of course. But you can look at recent history over the past 100 years. We didn't have the epidemic of promiscuity and abortion and everything else that we have now, that we've detached that social stigma, that moral stigma, and stopped teaching morality from the pulpits and from the schools in Catholic and Christian schools. You see how it works? No, I'm not trying to be the school marm here. We've all known young people who've gotten themselves in trouble. We're all sinners. You know, I had close friends back in the day who became pregnant outside of marriage. They fell, just like all of us fall to different sins, different degrees. We all do that. But they also understood the massive potential for scandal that was involved, and that there are consequences. And so they worked discreetly with their families to do the right thing. That's the way it was done for a long time. So that you didn't scandalize young people, so you didn't send the message that promiscuity is just fine or not a big deal. And by the way, these people, the friends of mine that I'm talking about, they've all moved on. It's ancient history for them now. They're practicing Catholics, good people, raising a bunch of kids, and perfectly happy. So it's not something that it is the scarlet letter that forever is going to be attached to them. People just move on because we're all sinners. So this is not Us saying to this little girl, yes, you low-life little pig, you didn't wait until marriage, so there, now we're going. No, that's not what this is about. There but for the grace of God go I, or go any of us. It can happen to anyone. But it's how a given society, or a family, or in this case a Christian school, how we handle this that matters, and that will have the greatest impact on efforts to put a stop to rampant sexual immorality, recreational sex, the whole friends with privileges things and all, and abortion and all the rest that today is tearing our society apart. It's not just abortion, folks, in the pro-life movement. There are a lot of problems, other problems too, that come before abortion. And if we don't change the ideology, the attitude, the thinking on sex outside of marriage, we are never going to stop abortion. And the fact that so much of the pro-life movement now makes plenty of room for supporters of contraception, well, this may be one of the reasons why abortion is still rampant and legal in this country and all around the world. Because too often abortion is being opposed on libertarian grounds. Abortion is only wrong because it harms another person, the baby. Whereas contraception, they argue, is a victimless crime. But no, that just isn't true. Everything that leads to abortion harms other people, undermines marriage, objectifies women, damages the family and the common good of society at its very core. It's not a victimless crime. It violates God's law. As abortion only comes later as yet another form of birth control in our society. What comes before is very important, is foundational, and has to be considered first. And again, if we don't do something about the contraceptive mentality, you can forget about ending the abortion scourge. It's not going to happen. This is what the little Christian school essentially is trying to say. And if the school stands its ground, young people everywhere will get an example. They will begin to see the fundamental problem with premarital sex, which leads to abortion oftentimes. And they will have a much better chance then of not being tempted by the barbaric sin of abortion. So if Maddie were my daughter, I'd say, Maddie, sweetie, come on. No, I love you, but you need to comply. We are, as a family, we're going to comply with the school's rules. And you need to do something now, make a decision now for which you'll be ever proud, forever proud of helping your little sisters see and do the right thing on all counts. They need your example, Maddie. Don't let them down. When we go overboard, on the other hand, praising kids for not killing their babies, we run the risk of inadvertently conveying the impression at least that abortion, in the back of our mind, at the end of the day, well, it's somewhat of an option after all. Because after all, if only heroes and the greatly virtuous, the heroically virtuous, if only they can resist abortion, and we're going to hug and congratulate those who do resist it as heroes, well, what about the normal people? And inside the walls of that Christian school, they're making a stand. It's not an option. Abortion is not an option. The issue of promiscuity and immorality actually trump the issue of abortion in that school. Now, this isn't about lacking compassion on the part of the school or us or anybody who's commentating on it. I mean, who among us isn't overjoyed when a woman, is induced or people are trying to convince her to abort her child for whatever reason, but she has the courage to resist? Those are the heroes of our day. The singer Andrea Bocelli, his story makes us weep. Take a look at that for a moment.
Allora, per questa occasione ho pensato di raccontarvi una piccola storia. E la storia è questa. Una giovane sposa in stato interessante fu un giorno ricoverata in un ospedale per un semplice attacco d'appendicite. I medici dovettero applicarle del ghiaccio sullo stomaco, sulla pancia, e alla fine di questi trattamenti i medici le consigliarono di abortire il bambino. Le dissero che era quella la soluzione migliore perché il bambino sarebbe nato sicuramente con qualche infermità. Ma la giovane coraggiosa sposa decise di non interrompere la gravidanza e il bambino nacque. Quella signora era mia madre e il bambino ero io. Sarò di parte, ma credo di poter dire che quella scelta fu una scelta giusta. e spero che questo possa essere di incoraggiamento per tante madri che qualche volta si trovano in momenti difficili, momenti di vita complicati, ma vogliono salvare la vita dei loro bambini.
It's just, you know, it's so beautiful, so awesome. So who isn't supportive of that sort of thing? Who isn't supportive and compassionate when any young woman gets in trouble, and rather than aborting the baby or rather than marrying the father rashly, who may be a real dirtbag, and perhaps making a bad situation worse, she decides to keep the child and do her best for him, or her best for the child. Who isn't impressed with that? Who isn't supportive of that situation? Or the countless young women who brought their babies to term and then sought out a good foster program where the children could be raised by a family who would love them and have the resources to keep them safe and happy. This story is all about that. It's all about compassion. It's all about a small Christian school standing against the whole world if need be, trying to help a young lady and all the young ladies and the kids, the boys who will come after her, by upholding God's commandments in the lives of their students, which are form the basis of a moral and happy society, a happy life. Have we really come so far from the sane world of our grandfathers and grandmothers that we would confuse such loving and guiding principles in a Christian school for nothing more than crass intolerance and a lack of mercy? Really? Please God, let it not be so. I'm Michael Matt down in the Remnant Underground. Don't forget, by the way, to help us out. You know, the icon is up here as per usual. You know, we're just looking for the $2 a month club. I think, well, what did we used to call that? The $2 club or something? Whatever it was, you know. And many of you have checked into that. It's really, really helping out. It's keeping us going. Just a couple of bucks a month. That the recurring payment that comes in is a great deal. So if you can help us out that way, we would appreciate it very much. Again, Michael Matt down in the catacombs. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.